as we talk about this. All right, objective 2, we're going to describe the process of spermatogenesis. So basically how sperm are developed and how hormones regulate that process. All right, so this is kind of an overview of the male reproductive system, and we can see several components here. We've got the penis, we've got the testes themselves, which are in the scrotal sac. We've got the epididymis, which is the tract from the testis to the vas deferens. So the vas deferens here goes all the way to communicate to the urethra, and the urethra opens out into the penis. So this is the urethra here. We've also got the seminal vesicle. So the seminal vesicle produces some of the fluid that is important for the passage of semen and for keeping semen healthy, even as they are exposed to the acidity in the vagina. We've also got the prostate here, which secretes some of the mucus fluid that, again, kind of keeps the sperm healthy and protected and lubricates the passageway as they leave the penis and ideally are deposited into the vagina and have to make their way up into the female uterus. So the production of these glands, the seminal vesicle and the prostate gland, are going to be important for keeping the sperm healthy so that they can complete their job of fertilizing the ovum. We've also got the bulbourethral glands. I think you may have spoken about this in lab. These also release secretions into the urethra, which help to lubricate this tract as well. So in females, we have the male reproductive organs called the testes. They're sometimes called the gonads. We've got certain compartments within the testes called seminiferous tubules, about 250 to 300 of these tubules. And this is where sperm are produced and where they develop. There are two important cells in the testes. There are Leydig cells, which are kind of off to the side. The Leydig cells are not inside these tubules. So if you look at this smaller picture here, the cells in blue that are in between the tubules, these are the Leydig cells. These secrete testosterone, whereas the actual cells that are lining these seminiferous tubules are the Sertoli cells. So the Sertoli cells are the cells that actually make up the seminiferous tubule, whereas the Leydig cells are kind of out in the periphery, which are not inside the tubule. And these two cells have kind of a different function, but they're also very important for each other. So the Leydig cells secrete testosterone, whereas the Sertoli cells help with the development and the production of the sperm. But the Sertoli cells also need this testosterone in order for that sperm development to take place. So although they have different functions, they're also really important for each other. Also a part of the testes, we have a bit of smooth muscle that's kind of surrounding the testes. This creates peristalsis, so this rhythmic contraction that helps to propel sperm from the testes where they're being produced into the vas deferens where they can make their way into the urethra and then be ejaculated via the penis. We also have the blood-testis barrier. So this is a really important tight junction region where we do not have exposure of sperm to the blood vessels that are circulating the testis. And this is really important because much like what we saw in the blood-brain barrier, we do not want the sensitive reproductive tissue to be exposed to toxins, pathogens that may be circulating in the vasculature. So the blood-testis barrier is an area that really prevents communication between the underlying blood vessels and the seminiferous tubules where these sperms are being produced. That barrier is created by the tight junctions. So if you look at this smaller picture here, this is the cross-section of one seminiferous tubule, right? So if you look at this picture, we can see all of these tubules, and if we took one of them and kind of looked at a single cross-section, this is what we would see, a cross-section of one of those tubules. So this is the lumen of that tubule. This is the underlying basement membrane of that tubule. The structures that form this blood-testis barrier are the tight junctions between the Sertoli cells. So these are Sertoli cells, and they have really tight junctions that prevent anything from communicating in between these cells. We've also got the luminal compartment of the seminiferous tubule, which is here. And then the basal compartment, which we can see out here. So these are the barriers that are preventing sperm from communicating with the underlying blood vessels, which would be out to the periphery of this tubule. Okay, let's speak a little bit more about the function of these two cells. So we've got the Sertoli cells, which are really supportive cells. They're helping to develop sperm. They're secreting the luminal fluid that will allow sperm to travel successfully to make their way out to the vas deferens. Sertoli cells also secrete androgen binding protein, which helps to keep the level of hormones in the luminal surface kind of steady. So these are kind of the roles of the Sertoli cells. They're more intimately involved in the production and the development of sperm, as we can see here. Sertoli cells are going to be the target of testosterone as well as FSH. So FSH standing for follicular stimulating hormone. If you remember, this is one of the hormones that comes from the anterior pituitary. And so these two products are going to act on the Sertoli cells and stimulate the development of our sperm. Sertoli cells also secrete another hormone called inhibin, and inhibin is going to have a negative feedback effect on the anterior pituitary and stop the production of FSH, which will further stop the stimulation of spermatogenesis. So there's lots of there's lots of inhibin being secreted that will have a negative feedback effect on the anterior pituitary, which will decrease the amount of FSH being secreted and will in turn decrease the amount of spermatogenesis taking place. Okay, in terms of the other structures of the male reproductive system, we've got the external genitalia, which is the penis. This is the male copulatory organ. So the function of the penis is really for creating the rhythmic contractions. It's made of erectile tissue, which can contract. It's going to fill with blood and create the propulsions that deposit sperm into the female reproductive tract. So that's the whole, not the whole, it has other functions. That's the role of the penis as it relates to reproduction. At rest, the penis is going to be flaccid, meaning that there isn't any blood filling the erectile tissue that surrounds the penis. But during sexual arousal, the penis will eventually become engorged as blood fills those vessels that surround that erectile tissue, and then that will create the contractions that are required to ejaculate that sperm through the urethra and deposit it into the female reproductive tract, okay? Another external genitalia is the scrotum. So the scrotum is the sac that hangs beneath the pelvis in males. This is what holds the testis. So we don't want to confuse the testis, which is the actual organ inside the scrotum, and the scrotum being just the skin that's holding the testis. And so this is where the testis is being housed. And the reason that the testis is being kind of suspended beneath the penis is because we don't want sperm developing inside the body cavity. The temperature, our core temperature, is just too high for the successful development of sperm. And so the scrotum allows the testis to hang beneath the penis, which is outside of the body cavity, which has a slightly cooler temperature for the development of sperm. So this is the tract or the path that sperm take from the time they develop in the seminiferous tubules. They go to the rete testes, then to the efferent ductules, which are parts of the testes, They exit the testis and make their way into the epididymis. And then from the epididymis, they can be deposited into the vas deferens. And the vas deferens is that tube that goes all the way and communicates to the urethra. Other accessory glands, I kind of touched on these glands. These glands are going to be producing fluids that help to protect the sperm, nourish the sperm, lubricate the path. We've got the seminal vesicles. These secrete an alkaline fluid that has fructose, which provides the energy. Remember, fructose is going to be important for creating ATP that actually energizes the sperm so they can move. We've got certain enzymes that are involved here, enzymes that are going to break away parts of the egg. So when the sperm gets to the egg, it's going to need certain enzymes to kind of burrow into the outer layer of the egg, as well as prostaglandins that help that process too. The prostate, and the reason this is alkaline, so the reason that this secretion here is alkaline is to combat the acidic environment in the vagina. So the vagina has a slightly lower pH, it's slightly acidic, and sperm would naturally die in that acidic environment. And that is the reason that this fluid is a bit alkaline to kind of neutralize the pH in the vagina. The prostatic secretions have citrate as well as enzymes. And again, citrate is going to be also important in the nourishing of the sperm as well as the producing ATP. So the biomolecules that are broken down to produce ATP to energize sperm. And then enzymes here are also important in burrowing through that layer of the egg. And then the bulbourethral glands, which are the smaller glands that I showed at the base of the penis, these are going to secrete the viscous fluid, which has mucus in it, and that is helping to lubricate this process, helping to allow sperm to travel seamlessly to their destination. So the main role of these glands is to nourish the penis, to provide the enzymes and the alkaline environment that sperm need in order to exist in the vagina, as well as to lubricate the journey from the urethra into the female reproductive tract. Let's look at this hormone regulation cycle here, and I think this will be the last thing we look at today. So this is the hormones that are active on the testes in order to bring about male reproductive function. So we should already know about this first part of the axis, right? The hypothalamic pituitary axis, where we have the trophic hormones from the hypothalamus. In this case, it's going to be GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone, stimulating the anterior pituitary to secrete the secondary hormones here, which are FSH, follicular stimulating hormone, and LH, which is luteinizing hormone. And these two hormones are going to act on the testes themselves. FSH specifically acts on the Sertoli cells. LH specifically acts on the Leydig cells. FSH will stimulate the Sertoli cells to secrete inhibin, as well as to begin spermatogenesis, which is the development and the maturation of sperm. Inhibin, we said, would have a negative feedback onto FSH. So excess quantities of inhibin would kind of shut off this FSH stimulation. LH, on the other hand, is going to secrete stimulate the Leydig cells to secrete testosterone. And then testosterone is going to do quite a few other things. Testosterone is also going to stimulate Sertoli cells. It's going to stimulate a negative feedback on the luteinizing hormone on the anterior pituitary, but it is also going to have a negative feedback all the way up in the hypothalamus onto GnRH. So this is kind of a series of events that really feed into one another. So although Sertoli cells are acted upon by FSH, it is also acted upon by testosterone, which is being stimulated under the influence of LH. So both of these hormones are kind of working hand in hand to mature sperm and then to have a negative feedback loop onto various parts of this axis. Okay. And I don't think you guys have this drawing. I'll post this drawing on Blackboard as a separate file, just so you'll have it to review. Okay, we'll call that a day for today. This is another table that you can kind of review here. We'll pick up next time by looking at the development